Hi one and all. So in the previous class, we discussed on project organization and we discussed on nesting workflows. More specifically, we learned a few of the best practices that the RPA developer has to use in order to organize the project, and we learned how RPA developer will nest the workflows, right? So in today's class, we shall discuss on, or we shall understand about reusability of workflows, commenting techniques and state machine. So we shall try to cover these three objectives in today's class, right? Once again I will repeat, in this class we will learn how to use the existing workflows and how to use the commenting techniques, and when and how to use the state machine. Clear? Okay, with this we shall start with the first one. We shall discuss on reusability of workflows. Any idea about reusability of workflows? So we already have learned about workflow, right? Correct. So as the title says, reusability of workflows means reusing the existing workflows in our current project. That's what the author is telling here. See here, reusing workflows makes the automation process or the development process easier and better, since we can use earlier created workflows, means existing workflows in our project that we are trying to use for the automation, means in the current project, right? So obviously it is true, right? Suppose assume that there is already a workflow, which is doing addition of two numbers, like we shall call these workflows as addition workflow, and let us assume there is also another workflow called a subtraction workflow, which will subtract two numbers. Now let us assume that you want to automate a task. The given task is you need to read two numbers, let us say x and y, from the user, and then you need to add two numbers, and then you need to subtract those two numbers, and you need to display the result of add and subtraction. See, let us assume this is the requirement and this is the current project you are working on, right? Now if you already know that there is already a workflow called add workflow for adding two numbers, and there is another workflow called subtraction workflow to subtract two numbers, then you can reuse this existing, or you can invoke this workflow in your current project. For addition, add workflow; for subtraction workflow. So as a result, see here, your development task, I mean your the time required to develop this project will be reduced, right? That's what he is telling, that easier and better. Why it is better? See, because already this workflow has been tested and debugged by I can say another programmer, usually called library programmer. So you no need to worry about the testing this particular component. You no need to worry about testing this particular component, because already it has been tested and proved that this workflow will work fine for adding two numbers. This workflow is working fine for subtracting two numbers, right? That's why it is called better. And remember, one more important point that you need to remember here, it is there are two ways for the RPA developer to reuse the existing workflows. Means one is invoke workflow file, which you already are aware, and the other one is templates. We shall go one by one. We already have known about how to invoke workflow practically when we have discussed this in the previous class, right? So we shall go touch upon invoke workflow first, and then we shall discuss on templates. So invoke workflow file is a good process if you have a complex automation project, it seems. See, that's what nothing but reusability. When you are dealing with complex automation project, then in order to save the time, or in order to build a robust robot, then this is a good process, it seems. And the idea is we can divide it into smaller parts, and then by using the invoke workflow file activity, we can collect all these smaller parts into a single workflow file. That's what I said in this example. That's what I said. See, if this is the given task, reading two numbers from the user and then adding two numbers and subtracting two numbers, then you need to divide your given task into subtasks like this, and you need to see that whether there is already a workflow for doing this particular subtask and there is already a workflow for this doing subtask. Then using invoke workflow, invoke the respective workflows, and then that this current project will become a single workflow file. That's what the author is telling here. But however, this is very important. If we want to invoke previously or existing workflows in our current workflow or new workflow, and if you do the changes to the new workflow, I mean this new means current. If you do changes in this new workflow, the previous or the existing workflow will also get affected, it seems, through arguments. Remember, we already are aware of arguments. I will tell you what is we already have aware of arguments, right? Okay, I will show you in the next slide or the screenshot about arguments, so that if you have forgotten, it will be useful. That screenshot will make you to recall the things, right? So but this is important. If you want to invoke the existing workflows in your workflow, and if you do the changes to the new workflow, the existing workflow will also get affected, it seems. So you need to be aware of this. Hence it is recommended by the what I can say, hence it is recommended to the RPA developer to use the invoke workflow file activity only when you are dealing with complex workflows, and we want to divide the process into smaller parts and then use them together. See, we already have learned about this. Only if this is the requirement, then you go for invoke workflow file, right? So, and another thing that you need to be aware about workflow is this is what I said: arguments, import arguments, edit arguments. We already have learned arguments are used to pass the data from one workflow to another workflow, right? And there is this is called an activity called invoke workflow file, which will help us to invoke the existing or already created workflow file. So this is what I said, arguments, where you already have aware of this, right? So as shown in the preceding screenshot, the invoke workflow file activity requires variable expression, that is nothing but arguments, right? And this one variable expressions, okay, or generally arguments. We can create a variable and set a timeout. Timeout can also be set at, it seems, that is required for the invoke workflow file activity. Time means, as the name itself says, when you can set a timer if there is a requirement, or if the requirement calls for the timer while invoking the workflow file activity, then you can go ahead with this timeout feature, right? So now we shall go ahead with the second method or second way for that is available for the RPA developer to reuse the existing workflow. See, we shall see what is the approach here. Okay, author is telling that saving the workflow as template helps you to preserve the original workflow file. Workflow, it seems. See, the drawback which was there in invoke workflow file can be solved using templates concepts, it seems, right? See here, simple. You need to save the workflow, created workflow, as a template, and once you save that as a template, then it will preserve the original workflow file, it seems. We shall see how it is. So whatever modifications you made in the template, obviously no changes will be made in the original workflow. You can treat, so suppose if this is the existing workflow, like add workflow, if this is the existing workflow, and if you have a sense saying that in future some RPA developer may use this add workflow, then you can save this workflow as a template, nothing but a copy of this workflow as a template, saying that add template. Then instead of previously they were using this workflow, then now the RPA developer, if there is a requirement to use the existing workflow, then they can use this template. And obviously changes made in that current project will not be affected to the original workflow file. That's what the author is telling here. See, we often use templates when creating a small pieces of common automation that are reusable and applicable. That's what I said. If you have a sense saying that in future this workflow that you are currently creating may be used by some other RPA developers in future, then obviously in that case you can save this workflow as an template. That's what the author is telling. So you can use templates if the workflow does not change over time. This is also another requirement, and if this workflow remains same for a longer time, and if it won't be changed even in future, then that is also a very good point to decide that whether you want to make this workflow as a template or not. Clear? So the most common example is when you create your own reusable snippets using data or data tables or XML files. See, that's what I'm telling. Bottom line is, if you are creating a workflow, okay, and if you treat, or if you have a sense that in future this workflow may be used by other RPA developers, and if you have a sense saying that this template remains same for a longer time, then this will become a suitable candidate for making a template. That's what the author is telling here. Clear? So now we shall see the steps that the RPA developer has to follow in order to make a workflow as a template. So first, what they are telling to do is, first you need to go to the library tab. See, library tab will be there here. If you click on this, then the library panel or tab will be opened here. Okay, and so there will be a folders like this. See, after clicking on, and then you need to click on add folder, so which will be there here. You need to click on add folder icon, it seems, and when you click on this, then obviously a window will appear asking for the user to browse for the required or the files containing the workflows, I mean the workflow that you have created. So just select the folder name from the list that contains all the workflows. Now the folder can be used anytime in any workflow from this library panel. That's it. So you can treat, for example, assume that you already have placed added the workflow and you have labeled that folder as samples, right? Similarly, if you add a new folder saying that add template, okay, then what you have to do, then just click, first step is go to the library panel, click on this new folder or add folder icon. Then if you click on this, then that will a window will be popped up asking for selecting or for browsing the files which has the workflows. Select that and label that folder as like something like add template. So after doing this, if you go to the library panel, there will be one more folder. There will be one more folder called add template. And if another RPA developer want to use that workflow, then they have to go to the library panel. Then they have to select from here. So from this, that's what the author is telling here. And we can also remove the existing templates, it seems. See here, if you just select the folder which has the workflows or the workflows, or I can say templates, okay, then just choose remove, then that complete folder will be removed from the library. That's what the author is telling here. See, now we shall move on to commenting techniques. I think you have already heard the word called comments. Okay, so using comments in workflows is considered a good practice. We already have known this even in C or in Java, as it can give a better step-by-step notification of what is done in the workflow. Or in make it simple, comments will help us to better understand the code, right? So that's what the author is telling here, and it's a good practice. So that's what, suppose if you don't have commented, or if you have not used any commenting while coding, then if that program has been handed to somebody, then that programmers will take more time to understand that particular code. So if you have commented, if you have used commenting techniques to comment the steps or the activities properly, then that RPA developer will take less time to understand what is going on. So if you want to give a simple example, even in C, for example, let us assume that a main has been created here, and there is a variable called, you have declared two variables called x and y, and if you have if you don't have used any comment taking techniques here, then there are many statements here, let us assume, then the programmer who is going through this program will take more time to understand. Let us assume that after a few statements they have done like this, x plus y, something printf %d x plus y, then after many statements they will understand that, oh, these variables are using for adding purpose. So instead of that, if you have used commenting techniques like here itself, so x and y to hold two input numbers given by the user for addition, then obviously within less time they can understand the purpose of these variables. Similarly, don't think that commenting can be used only for the variables, it can be used even for the functions also. So therefore, commenting in a complex workflow is considered to be a good practice while debugging. Or in other words, commenting will also helps the debugger to debug the code very easily. So this shows how if you not find this activities in the activities panel, then this is the step that you have to do, which you already have learned, that we need to go to the manage package icon, and then you have to search for UI path core activities from the package. Okay, and inside this package there will be a comment activity, it seems, and then you need to check that whether there is an install here. If there is an install here, then you need to click on the install, then only the comment activity will be visible in the activity panel. By default this package will be there. So but this is another, I mean, once again, if you don't find this comment activities like this in the activity panel, then you have to go to the manage packages icon, and you need to do the steps which you already have learned even in the previous classes too. So this is how if you drop a comment activity, this is how it will looks, and you can write your comments here. And obviously this activity will not be executed by the tool, it will be ignored, similar to Java or in C. Now finally we shall see what is state machine, and just we shall discuss this at a high level, and then in the next class we shall we already have learned this, we shall conclude this chapter in the next class by discussing when to use flowchart, state machines or sequence, etc. So now we shall see what the author is telling here. State machine uses a finite number of sets or states in its execution, it seems. Okay, just nothing but state machine, as in FAFL you have learned finite automata and formal languages. State machine is nothing but a collections of sets or states, like state 1, state 2, something like this. It can go into a state when it's triggered by an activity. It exits the state when another activity is triggered. Like in finite automata and formal languages, you have learned that if this is the present state and if there is an input called a symbol, then it will go to the state S2 or something like. Similar to the same scenario, the state machine will work even here. Another important aspect of state machine is transactions. So transactions will be there in the state machine, and this is the state which will handle the business logic. They can enable you to add conditions based on which transactions jumps from one state to another. That's what, to implement business logic, you can add conditions inside this transaction, it seems, depending on the requirement. These are represented by arrows and branches between states. So how to drop a state machine? So just use a keyword called state in the activities panel, and the state activities related to state machine will be displayed here. So now we shall go one by one. There are two activities specific to state machines here, it seems. They are state and final state, it seems. This one and this one. The state activity consists of 3 sections: entry, exit and transaction, while final state contains only entry section, it seems. So if you want to view this, so first what you need to do, suppose let us assume that your intention is to use final state. So just drag this activity from the activity panel and drop it to the designer panel. Then you need to, suppose assume this is the final state, then you need to double click on this in order to view this 3 section. That's what the author is telling here. Now we shall see. Now, so this is how. So in case of final state activity, there is only one section called entry section. So this is what we said, only entry section. And in case of state activity, entry, exit and transition, right? See, in case of state activity, entry will be there, exit will be there, transition sections will be there. So this is what the author is telling here. So just we are learning the layout. We shall see an example in the coming classes. So this at this point I will conclude the today's class. So just what we learned is, we learned how to use the existing workflows, I mean reusability of workflows. Remember, there are 2 methods for available for the RPA developer to reuse the existing workflow. One is invoke workflow file and the other one is templates, right? And then we discussed commenting techniques and why we need to use commenting techniques, and then we learned about state machines, right? Correct. So usually to automate the complex tasks, we need to go to the state machine layout. We already have learned that. So but anyhow, in the next class we shall see in little bit depth level when to use flowchart, state machines or sequences. We already have learned this even in the previous classes. Once again we shall recall this. So with this I will end today's session, and we shall meet in tomorrow's class or in the next class. So thank you, Ananda.